What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Second Syndicate, where the second is first. This is going to be a very amazing show that we're going to have for you today. We have the Second Amendment Foundation as our guest, and we also have a special guest host, Mike of Ex America News. He is sitting in for my buddy Teddy, who is somewhere on a beach somewhere, and I'm jealous. So yeah, we're working while Teddy's over there having a good time. So shout out to Teddy and Rosia, the other parts of the Second Syndicate. We are just going to probably jump right in, just so you guys know who our guest is. We have Bill Sack, Director of Legal Operations at the Second Amendment Foundation. And the focus of today is basically like legal warfare, political recourse, fighting the tyranny that's going on with the feds here, possibly in Colorado, and getting informed on what the Second Amendment Foundation does. So, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So, Mike, you want to give them just a brief introduction on who you are so they know who my co host is?
Yeah. Well, greetings, fellow thought criminals. I'm Michael Lauber. I co-host The Insurrection every day here on Ex America News. Well, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to noon Eastern. And then I also do a production for a number of other programs we have on Ex American News. Like I assist with the Second Syndicate. I do America's Mom. I help film American Made. And I'm a regular co-host on The Right Hook with Steve Hook.
Awesome. And Bill, tell them a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the Second Amendment fight.
Sure thing. I am Bill Sack. I'm Director of Legal Operations with Second Amendment Foundation. I am a practicing attorney here in Pennsylvania. I'm just outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs.
Ooh.
I've been working in the Second Amendment liberty space for the last 5 or 6 years or so, I think, at this point. Um, and came to it as not a lifetime shooter, but a shooter for the last 15 years or so, and ended up having career 1.0 come to a conclusion and decided to be a grown up and go to law school. And right after I graduated law school, was able to join the 2A fight alongside my intrepid boss and Second Amendment advocate, our executive director here at SAF, Adam Kraut.
Oh, shout
As
out
we
to
are
Adam.
both,
I know Adam.
yep, we are both alums of the same law school, and I used to buy guns from Adam at the local gun store over here. And when he found out I was also going to law school, I made a note to call him when I was done, and was smart
Nice.
that I did.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that. It's nice to have patriots in this space to help people like us. It's kind of a mystery what goes on behind the scenes in the fight for the 2A, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on our show is because we want to help take away the allure of, what is really going on. I think a lot of people have high hopes for organizations like yourself, like, hey, these bills got passed. What are you guys doing? But I don't think a lot of the people understand the process, the cost, what actually can happen versus the street knowledge of what people think that they know, etc. So hopefully we'll unveil some of those questions people have today. We'll just jump right into it. And I just thought we'd ask, what are some of SAF's, the Second Amendment Foundation's biggest recent courtroom victories and what made them possible and what role did you have in those?
Sure. So we've had a number of notable wins over the last year or so. Since the Bruin decision came out about well 2.5 years ago at this point, it really opened the floodgates for a whole bunch of new litigation. And we've been in an ongoing lawsuit sprint since then. We've got like almost 60 pieces
Wow.
of active litigation all over the country going right now. But some of the areas where we're seeing some exciting wins are in the young adult space. If you're an adult in this country who happens to be under 21, there are a bunch of jurisdictions that almost completely extinguish your rights. There are multiple states where you can't buy any gun whatsoever. There are multiple states where you can't get a carry permit or carry in any fashion if you're under 21. So that's a big problem. Now, of course, it only affects those folks, right? And it only affects them for a temporary amount of time. But during that time period, and all of us were 18 to 20 at some point in our lives, their rights are being stripped from them in total. And so we've got cases all over the country challenging these laws, and we've had a couple really good wins in these cases that have now been allowed to stand by the Supreme Court at the circuit level. We had a case called Worth, which is out of Minnesota. It's a young adult carry case where the Supreme Court just recently denied cert, which was actually a good thing because we won in the Eighth Circuit. So by the Supreme Court denying that, our Eighth Circuit win is allowed to stand.
Nice.
And then we have another, similar kind of adjacent case called Lara, which is out of Pennsylvania, here, my home state, where we won in the Third Circuit, where the Third Circuit said that 18 to 20-year-olds are part of the people that the Second Amendment contemplates, and that they have the full panoply of Second Amendment rights, that the rest of, us adults who are a little older than 21 are. Um, and so we're seeing multiple other jurisdictions hopefully starting to fall in line with that. So we think that's an area that we're really excited that we're winning these rights kind of in total back for these young folks.
Nice.
Some other things that we're doing, we have assault weapons cases all over the country. I know Colorado is
Mm.
feeling really salty about the assault weapons issue right now, and for a very good reason. We still have what we hope is the best possible case in front of the Supreme Court, for their consideration on cert, which is the Snope case. That's our challenge to the
Yep.
Maryland assault weapons ban. That's a case that's, that the Supreme Court has been considering our petition for cert for going on. I think it's been relisted for conference 13 times at this point.
Okay.
So we're not exactly sure what the Supreme Court is thinking on that, but they haven't denied it yet. So hopefully that means they're considering it, and maybe they're just biding their time and waiting for an opportune moment. But so we're certainly hopeful that there's a big win forthcoming on the assault weapons issue.
I'd
Um,
say your chances there are
yeah.
probably pretty good because even though the Supreme Court's been kind of squishy on other issues lately when it comes to immigration and presidential powers, this court seems to do pretty well with most Amendment decisions that they do understand the law, they understand the Constitution, and generally rule with the people.
Yeah, the personnel on the court right now, we certainly think are sympathetic to the proper interpretation of the Second Amendment. And, we've seen dissents from
The usual
Alito
suspects.
and Thomas, who both have said on the assault weapons issue specifically, like, hey guys, it's time that we take this and put this
Yeah.
to bed once and for all. So, hopefully they get two more justices to agree with them, and then we can get at least a cert grant on this and get some moral arguments cooking for the people. And yeah, we're hopeful from there we'd be able to convince a majority of the court.
So, how do you, as an organization, decide which anti gun laws to challenge, and where's the legal battlefield shifting next in all of these decisions? Because I'm not sure if the people out there watching understand. Yesterday was the last day of the legislative session here in Colorado. So, there are bills that are waiting signature, but for the most part, all the gun control passed. And now we have to wait till these laws go into effect to even have the ability to fight back because we need standing in order for that to happen.
So yeah, so how do we decide what laws to challenge? So, we're a public interest nonprofit group. So we always operate in the public interest, and we operate in the interest of the most people affected whenever we can. So we look for laws that affect large populations of people and where the issues themselves are broad. So, issues like 18 to 20-year-olds affects, probably hundreds of thousands of people all over the country. Or if it's a law that affects an entire state, for example, like Colorado or California or Massachusetts or Maryland or any of the now New Jersey, any of the frequent flyers when it comes to
Yeah.
unconstitutional gun control. And then we also look at the issue itself. How egregious is the regulation or the ban or the prohibition, or the delay or the burden or the cost, the fees. And we try to go after, the laws that affect the most people in the worst ways first, for all of the self-evident reasons. And then, kind of once we dive down a little more into like the legal nitty-gritty, we have to also be mindful of making sure that we bring cases that we feel that we have the best chance of winning. Um, you know, in addition to hopefully making good law in these sorts of cases, we always have to be mindful of also creating bad law. Good law is binding for a long time, and that's really helpful, but bad law is also binding for a really long time.
Yeah.
So we try to really pick our spots and operate with a little bit of strategery, to try to make sure that we are putting ourselves in the best position to get the best possible outcome. I can say one other thing that, we're always mindful of is, especially in the federal system, the ultimate goal is always to get up to the Supreme Court. So we need to read the tea leaves to a certain extent to try to figure out what cases do we think the Supreme Court is interested or likely in hearing in the next year or two or three, as that's approximately how long these cases take to get there. And then how is it that we can get the attention of the court to take our case? So whether we can create a circuit split where we have different federal circuits in different parts of the country coming to different conclusions on the same issue of law, or if there is some sort of disconnect between something that the Supreme Court has already said, where we can show that, like, hey, California is thumbing its nose at you, Supreme Court. You
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
said that this is how it works, and look what they did. They're not following what you guys just told them they need to do. So we try to keep all of those things in mind. And then, candidly, money is a thing, right? Money is not unlimited, and lawyers are expensive, and lawsuits are expensive. And so, we do the very best that we can do to efficiently use the money that we get from our members and supporters. One of the things that we're really proud of here at Second Amendment Foundation is that 80% of every dollar donated goes directly to the mission.
That's
Wow.
So,
wonderful.
and that is documented, that you can read that information in our annual report that is available on our website. All of our, tax forms are all public and all of that. But 80% of every dollar goes directly to the mission. So, we're really proud about that, and we make sure that, we really maximize the donations we get and file as many cases as we can.
That's wonderful to hear. I really appreciate that. With our new endeavor, speaking of things cost money, Teddy Rossi and I created the Second Syndicate as a 501c4 because we wanted to be able to use the platform that we have to actually make a difference in local policy because of all the gun control that we're seeing in Colorado. And it's not an easy thing to do. So we appreciate now in hindsight, just as we're getting started, organizations like yours that are actually, putting their money where their mouth is. And it's saf.org, correct? And that's where
It's
people
us,
can go. They can donate
saf.org.
because this is not cheap. This is an expensive process. I don't think people really understand the importance of having money behind these fights. And that's one of the things that's really hindering us is because the left has deep pockets and anti-gunners have billionaires backing them up. So we need the real fight to come really in the financial way. So
Yeah.
if you guys out there listening, donate to SAF, donate to the Second Syndicate, subscribe, and if you don't have money, you could always share and promote the content and share their name and do what you can.
Yeah,
Awesome.
because these gun grabbers are all essentially state sponsored. That's the big problem right there is they have essentially unlimited resources to fight you in court. They can drag it out. They know it's going to cost you more. And that's part of the tactic is try
Yeah.
to bankrupt their opponents, as we've seen the federal government do with J6 defendants and everyone else. That the process becomes the punishment. They want to make it exceptionally expensive and hard to carry on the fight. So at some point, when you get a ruling you don't like, maybe you'll just decide to sit out the next round when you could appeal things up. But they're only forced to do that if we don't fund the organizations that are out there protecting our rights.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember they're able to pay their lawyers with your tax money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's so disgusting to me that we're investing in our own demise by just making money and being
Yep.
an American. And they take that money and they use it to create things that hurt us and take away from us. It's like I'm literally paying you to abuse me. It's the worst case of Stockholm syndrome ever documented
Well,
in the world.
yeah, and that's
Although
why
I,
it's these local and state elections become so important because once they get a hold of those purse strings, they will weaponize that money, your tax dollars, against you and against your, our beliefs and our constitutional values.
Nice. I can't even imagine what it's going to cost to litigate all of the things that we have going on in here in Colorado. Like, I believe at least 10 more gun bills just passed. And I haven't even had time to actually tally all of them and go look at them just because it's just racking it up like
Yep.
racks, man. So one of the things that I do hear people talk about is Bruin, right? We were just brought up the fact that Bruin was a huge win for us. So how are states trying to get around it, and how is SAF responding with that? Because
And a quick
obviously you said like the 18 to 21, because we have that issue here. How do those cases dictate the standing of the laws that they've passed here restricting 18 and 21-year-olds?
And quickly for our audience, can you summarize the Bruin decision? Because I feel like a lot of people kind of have a tentative grasp on this, but don't really understand. They just hear it in gun control legislation over and over again, but don't necessarily understand the real impact of the Bruin decision.
Yeah, sure. So the case is New York State Rifle Pistol Association v. Bruin. It was a Supreme Court case and it came out of New York State. And what you folks might remember is before Bruin, there were a number of states that had concealed carry permit regimes where essentially 99.9% of the people that applied got denied.
Yeah.
And the way that they crafted those schemes is that they were what was called may issue, which means that basically the default is you get denied unless you can prove to the government a special reason why you should have your permit. And this was in juxtaposition to the rest of free America, where we all have what are called shall issue permits, where the default assumption is you get your permit because your constitutional rights say that you have a right to carry, unless the government can prove a reason why you shouldn't have it. So it was the opposite presumption.
Sure.
So what the Bruin case said was it said that the may issue regimes that were required a justifiable need or a special need outside of just being an American who has Second Amendment rights was unconstitutional, that the 5 or 6 states that had permitting regimes like that had to cut it out. So it meant that states like New York, California, New Jersey, Maryland, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Connecticut, I think is the list, that had the shall issue regime or the may issue regimes rather, were going to have to cut that out, and they were no longer going to be able to deny everybody their carry permit. What the Bruin decision also said, kind of more broadly, and this is the real important stuff, is it said that there is a constitutional right to carry a gun outside the house, which we could all have assumed because to keep and bear arms is pretty clear. But the Supreme Court had never formally said that there is a right to have a gun on your person outside of the home. So it said that. So that was a big deal, and that affected carry rights for the entire country. The other thing that the Bruin decision did was it clarified that a number of circuit courts had been doing the wrong analysis for gun control laws under the Second Amendment. So the proper analysis is what's called text as defined by history and tradition. So what that means is to determine what the Second Amendment protects. So is gun control law X a violation of the Constitution? To determine that, first you look at the plain text of the Second Amendment and you see if the conduct that the law regulates is implicated. So is it about keeping arms or bearing arms? So if it's about this, any sort of gun you can have, what you can do with your gun, what kind of gun, where you can have your gun, then that's keeping or bearing. So that implies that implicates the Second Amendment.
Yes.
So if that happens, then the question is, okay, now the government has to prove that the gun control piece is constitutional in the way that they do that. And again, it's the government's burden to prove it. The default assumption is that all gun control is unconstitutional until the government proves that it isn't.
Yes.
They have to go back to the history of gun control regulation at the time of the founding. So that's 1791 is the ratification of the Second Amendment. So they have to go back and show that there was a tradition of this sort of regulation when the Second Amendment was written and ratified. And that sort of regulation they can do now, and that's it. So it's a much more narrow subset of regulation that's constitutional because guns were hardly regulated at all at the time of the founding. So that test was really the biggest thing that came out of the Bruin decision because that affects every Second Amendment case from here on out. So right to carry and what the proper test is. Those are the big things that come out of Bruin. So, Alicia, your question was, okay, so what did all the states that didn't like that decision do about it? So they all literally passed new legislation that they called the Bruin Response Bill. There were multiple bills that were called the Bruin Response Bills. And they keyed on a few key things. But most importantly, what they did was they keyed on some language in some prior decisions that talked about the ability to ban guns in, quote, sensitive places, unquote.
Ah,
So sensitive places have been historically viewed as things like courthouses, where the government has a legitimate layer of security that they are going to protect you and not just say that they're protecting you, but actually do it. And so in those sorts of very limited circumstances, they can disarm you. So like here in Pennsylvania, if you want to go into a courthouse, they have lock boxes in the lobby. You leave your gun in there.
Yeah, and some of those, generally they make sense. Like, going to a prison, they obviously want to keep a sterile environment with no weapons there. Same with a mental institution. And I think most of us kind of understand those situations. But the problem is expanding these in a lot of these states, like Colorado, to, school zones or, parking lots where there's a post office and a shopping center. They still say it applies to the whole parking lot, stuff like that. Like, that's where this creeping arm of government keeps coming in to restrict our rights more and more. And again, they're not doing this for any sort of remotely valid reason. They're not doing it because there's been a continuous problem with, people going through school zones, taking shots at the school. It's because they want to have more reasons to stop you and to take your rights away. And they want to have a larger grasp over control of your life and control of your firearms.
everything
Right.
that
They
you're
just don't want you to
mentioning,
have a
Will.
gun in public.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
everything that you're
basically.
saying is exactly what they're doing here. We have
Yes.
the ammo restrictions now on purchasing if you're under 21. We have you have to be 21 or older to purchase a firearm in the state of Colorado. We have all of these things. We have the sensitive spaces bill that they passed last year that they wanted to extend it to churches and parking lots and things of that nature, but that's how they do it. They create these laws that are so broad and they include churches, sidewalks, all these things, and they know that they'll whittle it down and still get what they want out of it, but they purposely overshoot so people will be outraged, so less always seems more acceptable, and even though it's not acceptable whatsoever.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I know in the specifically in the case of New Jersey, the during the I believe it was in the Senate debate about their sensitive places bill, which we're suing on. The sponsor of the bill was asked point blank, can you identify a single square inch of the state of New Jersey that is not covered by one of the sensitive places in your bill? Or does your bill create all of New Jersey as a place you cannot carry, even though you can now get a carry permit because Bruin says you have the constitutional right to carry, and he could not identify a single place where you would be able to carry. So you're absolutely right. This is the game that we're playing, is they said, oh crap, now we have to give all of these people their permits. So that isn't the way that we can disarm them. So now instead what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, you can have your permit, peasants.
Yeah.
You just can't use it anywhere.
Or
It's
you can't
good
buy guns,
nowhere.
or you have
And
to have
then,
permission to buy a gun.
as you mentioned, they said, okay, what else can we do to harass these people?
Yeah.
Well, they already need to pass a background check to buy the gun. What if we make it so they need the background check to possess the gun and a background check to carry the gun?
And maybe
Let's
some
make them
insurance to throw in the mix. You got to have a CCW insurance.
Mm-hmm.
right. And as you guys know, all of this it has absolutely zero connection, either intent or in actuality, to reducing crime, and has everything to do with
Control.
making it so
Yeah.
burdensome, expensive, aggravating, and dumb to be able to exercise your rights that fewer people will do it. That's
Yep.
the whole point, is that if you make it really crappy to deal with the process, 20% of the people will just throw their hands up and say to heck with it. Another 20% won't be able to afford it. We have some California counties now where a concealed carry permit costs $2,000.
Jesus.
And that's just for the permit that I think is good for 2 years. And a year later you have to start the renewal process again because it takes a year, and then it's $500 every 2 years or
Wow.
more to renew it. And
And
I mean, the intent of that is obvious.
we're expecting and when experiencing that with Senate Bill 3 that just passed here in Colorado, because we have no idea what those hidden fees or what those costs are going to be. And we are actually a shall issue state when it comes to the concealed handgun permit in Colorado. However, the concealed handgun permitting laws change July 1st, 2025, so just in a month. And also now the Senate Bill 03 requires a shall issue to uh, or excuse me, a may issue through the sheriff or the Department of Wildlife if they want to allow you to be able to have this permit to purchase a firearm based on personal recognizance. So it's like if they can't get you over here with the concealed handgun permit, they're going to get you over here because they want to make sure that at the end of the day, they're the people that are judging you and deciding well what you can and cannot access. Speaking of that, we are going to lead into a break. We're going to have a word from our sponsor, Mike Lindell.
Hello,
And then
everyone.
was that
I'm
good?
excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
He's going to bring us, he'll tell me. And we're back.
And thank you for staying with us. And right now, Mike Lindell and all his team at My Pillow and My Store really do need your help. You guys have probably seen ever since he's threatened to run against Tampon Tim in Minnesota, our media is on the attack again. And right now, My Pillow employs over 2,500 people here in the U.S. My Store is small businesses all over the country. So right now, if you use your code, which is
The
Alicia,
second.
the second at either My Store or mypillow.com, you will get the deepest discounts they have to offer. And right now, Mike's got his new energy drink out, Rev 7. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but what better person to design an energy drink than a former crack addict? So, I mean, if you want something that's going to definitely get you through the whole day and won't stop your heart, give Rev 7 a try.
I definitely need to have some now. Like, shout out to Mike Lindell. That's friggin' awesome. All right. I love these people. I love this beautiful, beautiful platform of freedom. Shout out to Spartan Defense. Shout out to Ex America News for giving this an opportunity to speak freely without the shadow banning. We're actively working very, very hard to bring you actual truth without censorship, and we're doing that together. Thank you to our sponsors, Second Amendment Foundation. So we're back with Bill, and he is an attorney for the Second Amendment Foundation, and we want to talk about political reality that is happening here, not only nationally but here in Colorado. And we were touching on Senate Bill 25003 that was just passed, which is a permit to purchase and a semi-automatic magazine-fed firearm in the state of Colorado that the governor did sign, that goes into effect on August 1st, 2026. And we wanted to know from the Second Amendment Foundation and, the word of their mouth, what real options do Coloradans have now to, fight back on this horrific nightmare of a law, because this is probably putting us in the top 3, I believe, in the nation for gun control.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing permit to purchase, permit to possess. I mean, Illinois has had the firearm owner's ID card, the
Yeah,
Floyd
the
card. New
Floyd.
Jersey has something equivalent.
Yeah.
Um, Although I believe a state court in Illinois just struck down the Floyd card in some somewhat narrow circumstances, but there's a little bit of crack in the wall over there in Illinois. So we're taking a real hard look at I guess what was SB3, and I forget what the House bill number was, the assault weapons ban that became not a ban, not a
Mhm.
total ban anyway, in Colorado to try to find the best way to attack it. As we were talking about before the cameras started rolling, the exact extent to what sort of permitting schemes the Supreme Court is going to be okay with and what sort of permitting schemes the Supreme Court's not going to be okay with is still a really big question. So one of the things that the Bruin decision spoke about was it said that some permitting is going to be okay, but once it gets to the point of being burdensome, either by fee or by logistical requirement or otherwise, that there's a line, right? There is a line that's too far, so far that it violates the Constitution. And what we don't know yet is what that line is. And so what we're seeing now is, the gun control groups like Everytown and Brady are drafting these bills and just delivering them to the state legislatures that are interested in passing them. We're seeing almost the identical laws passed all over the country.
Mhm.
And what they're designed to do is to push and see where the edges are. And so, what Second Amendment Foundation and I'm sure other organizations like us are doing is trying to find the right spots and the right versions of the bills, the various bills, to attack the most egregious ones first to get wins. Because the most important thing we can do right now is get wins on these things. The last thing we want is a circuit court saying, "Yeah, this looks fine to us. This is constitutional. We're going to uphold this." And so we have to be really mindful of that. And so on the permitting thing, like let's be clear. Second Amendment Foundation does not support permits to purchase, permits to possess, even permits to carry, frankly. But we also have to operate within the frame of what the Supreme Court has so far said and what we think they're likely to do in the immediate future. Because our job is not to just, throw our wishes into a well, but also to get positive outcomes for the people who are affected by these laws and that are funding our lawsuits and both. So, continuing to talk to your legislators, let them know what it is that you will vote for and what you will kick those bums out for is super important. What we saw, and I'm sure as you guys know, this was going to be an outright assault weapons ban. This was
Yeah.
going to be like a possession ban, although I think at least the most recent version before it got amended did have some grandfathering clauses in it.
Yeah.
But the governor stepped in because he wants to run for president and he knew he would get hammered in the primaries if
Mhm.
his state had an outright assault weapons ban. So he went back to the Senate and said, guys, we need to soften this. That's not the win that we want, but it still shows that an assault weapons ban is incredibly politically unpopular and that unpopularity had some effect on the legislating process. So again, it took it from terrible to marginally less terrible, which
Yeah.
isn't good, but it does show the power of political influence. So, we need
They
to
looped it
do
up before they rammed it home first.
we need to do two
Yeah.
things, right? Like
Jer-
we need to make sure that the people that already agree with us are active and talking to their legislatures and making their opinions known. But the other thing that we have to do, which we're not as good at in the gun community, if we're honest, if we're going to look in the mirror, is broaden the tent.
Yeah.
Like we don't need well, we need everybody voting, obviously. And your hat makes a good point. And I think, like this last election, Trump really went out of his way to mobilize the gun community because they realized that traditionally we don't vote because we've got a pretty strong libertarian streak in us.
Hmm.
We don't vote in the numbers that typically other conservative groups vote.
Yeah.
But that
Or even
there are a
register.
lot of us. So broadening the tent is big, like
Yes.
being able to be a reasonable, caring individual who can also advocate for the Second Amendment, take a neighbor who's never been shooting to the range for the first time and let them have a positive experience. Like those sorts of things in the somewhat longer arc of time are the ways that we're really going to turn the tide here is, impress upon people that guns are normal and normal people shoot guns is the most important thing I think that honestly we can be doing to make sure that these sorts of things don't happen in the future. Because I mean, the best thing that could happen to me is if I lost my job, right? If there were no more gun ban bills that we needed to challenge, if there were no more carry bans that we needed to challenge, if all of that was done, I'd be thrilled and I would go open a food truck or something. Um,
Two-way
so
tacos.
yeah, exactly. So, making sure that we're actively recruiting and spreading the message, not just amongst ourselves, but talking to somebody who's maybe kind of gun agnostic
Yeah.
and
I agree.
impressing upon them, like, look, maybe even gun ownership isn't for you. That's fine.
Mhm.
Everybody doesn't have to own a gun, but they still should support your right to own a gun and your right to protect yourself and the right
Well,
of anybody in the country to protect themselves.
that's one of the things I find kind of interesting about this whole thing is even a majority of leftists, Democrats support, well, I guess probably not leftists, more your traditional blue dog type Democrats, even they support gun ownership. Um, the issue is really more with the politicians and the people that are elected and put in power. Now, since most of the problems seem to be coming at the state level in various the usual suspects, the usual states. Is it time now to maybe pursue national concealed carry, national rules on a lot of these? Because that's something I've heard a lot of gun owners say, and that's one of their frustrations right now, especially with the current Congress, is right now the Hearing Protection Act, that's just sitting in committee. Same with the other bill to remove SBRs and short-barreled shotguns and any other weapon from the NFA registry. Those are all just sitting in committee. That's these Republicans in D.C. that won't do anything about it, even though the people are behind it in both parties. And would that actually circumvent states from then imposing their own gun control if we did have national concealed carry or national concealed carry reciprocity or other things like that? Or would we still have all these issues out of the, California, Colorado, Illinois, the usual suspects?
Yeah, I mean, because of our federalist system, and the supremacy clause, federal law trumps state law. So if we had things like national reciprocity, um, for folks carry permits, then yes, that would alleviate the problems. But it's not going to happen, unfortunately. And the reason is, at least for the time being, is the filibuster. In order to get anything passed, right now the Republicans have the House and they have the Senate, but they only have the Senate by what, one or two? So, you need 60 to get anything passed. So if you're hanging your hat on a national concealed carry reciprocity or the SAFE Act, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment, unfortunately. We would love for those things to pass, but I think it's an unreasonable expectation at this point. So I think if you're looking for Congress in particular to solve these problems, you're going to be left wanting during this administration, unless we see a shift at the midterms. If the Republicans pick up a few Senate seats, then that changes things entirely.
Are there
Um,
any Democrats in the Senate that would get behind something like this now? Because I know previously you had Manchin and a few others that probably would have. And it seems like you could probably strong arm some of them that are in otherwise red states, that if you put enough pressure on them, they may get a yes vote. It wouldn't take that many to do that.
no, it wouldn't. So far, I haven't seen a whole lot of Democrat willingness to participate in anything collaborative with this administration.
Oh,
Of
And
course.
that's a
I
mess.
would not hold my breath expecting any, even if it was otherwise on issues that just from a purely issue on an issue area, they might be inclined to, be more willing to consider something like that because they're in, one of those purple areas, Virginia, things like that. Even parts of Pennsylvania, where I am. But I I don't have a whole lot of hope for that, unfortunately. And that's not to say we shouldn't try it. Um,
That's
what we're doing on, instead of waiting for national concealed carry reciprocity, what we have currently going in a number of different states is pursuing the availability of non-resident carry permits. So, a lot of states have reciprocity with one another on a voluntary basis where the various attorney generals have decided to shake hands and play nice. But where that's not an option, you still, as a out-of-state resident, should have the ability to get a carry permit. And it doesn't matter where you reside in terms of your ability to carry in whatever state that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, for the longest time, California had no non-resident carry permits. If you didn't live in California and you had to go to California for work or because you had family there or whatever, it didn't matter how regularly you went or how much time you spent there, if your residence was out of state, you were SOL. So we filed a lawsuit. It's called CRPA versus Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and we won an injunction in that case. That's that where the court said, California, cut it out. You're going to have to offer carry permits to these out-of-state residents. And effective about 2 weeks ago, you can now do that as a
Nice.
resident of any state outside of California. You can apply for a California non-resident carrier permit. They have to accept the application and process it. There are still all of the same California ridiculous training requirements and all the other things you have to do to get a California permit, but at least that avenue is now open for you. And so, we are dragging these reluctant jurisdictions kicking and screaming, into compliance with the demands of the Second Amendment. And because we can do that on a case by case basis and get the courts to say, California, you can't avoid this anymore. Eventually, we will get to the point where concealed carry reciprocity won't even be necessary. It still would be better, mind you, than having to get 50 permits for 50 states. But we're doing what we can now. And if at some point, a party that is sympathetic to the Second Amendment can beat the filibuster, then boy, would that be great. I'd go on
Nice.
vacation.
Nice. I need a vacation too. Um, I know a lot of organizations here locally are doing a lot of petitions to Pam Bondi. Like, hey, Pam Bondi, we need some help. What can you do? Come fight back, help us on a federal level. What does that actually look like for the people out there who keep hearing this and they're like, well, Pam Bondi, but what is the true process if and when that could happen?
Yeah, so great question. So, we have seen some positive movement from the feds on the Second Amendment. Maybe not as far as we would like, and we're hoping that there's still going to be more, but we've seen some positive movement. And I can think of 3 or 4 things that I can go through. So one of the things that the feds have started to do is or not create, but actually execute or put into effect a path for individuals that are prohibited people, who had non-violent, non-dangerous convictions that cause them to be prohibited people, to seek a restoration of rights with the federal government, to apply to have their rights restored to them. That ability has kind of existed for a long time, but because of some clever Senate wrangling, approximately 30 years ago, the petition process for that was housed at the ATF and then purposefully never funded. So in theory, it existed, but it literally was like a dead letter. There was no one and no thing and no process to actually uh, process those applications.
Mm-hmm.
So what Pam Bondi has done is taken that petition application process out of the ATF and brought it into the DOJ, where they're actually being done now. So some of your listeners may recall that Mel Gibson notably got his federal rights
recently.
restored. So he was
That's
the
dope.
first batch with, I believe, 9 other people who were able to get their federal rights restored and are going to be able to own and possess firearms again. So that's one thing that the feds have done, which is a step in the right direction.
That's good. I
Um,
truly support that as well. I think if you shouldn't have to risk your family's life and all of those things if you truly paid your debt.
Especially if it's a nonviolent crime. I mean, that's the ones that really get me. If it's a nonviolent felony, because some of those can be, I came from the staffing industry. I ran staffing companies for a long time before I got involved in media. And we had people all the time that might have a felony charge on their record due to like back child support. And sometimes it was unreasonable circumstances that started that. It was a judge in the door, right as they file for the divorce, demanding $30,000 to the spouse that they don't have, and now bam, you're a felon when you don't come up with 30 grand over 6 months or whatever the time limit was. And those are people that really are abused by the system. or tax
Cannabis.
evade. Yeah, cannabis, that'd be another good one, another good example. Or other ones that they're not trying to directly harm somebody, so they do deserve, I think, to have rights restored once their debt's paid, once they've served their time or done whatever, paid their fines, whatnot. That being a full person and able to fully participate in society again should be something that's available to you.
I agree.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. We are going to go to an ad from LUTF Studios, and we will be right back.
Well, hello everybody! It's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. Finish this painting, but I'm sure, for this I hope, I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
Welcome back, everyone. That was a great word from our sponsors. Be sure to remember our code, the second, and get you some. Get you some, baby. So you say it's live up to freedom. Live up to freedom.
LUTF Studios, as in Live Up to Freedom. That's Annie Cyrus's webpage. You can go there to get her Substack articles, view prior shows, or order yourself a beautiful, handmade, one-of-a-kind piece of artwork that will become a treasured family heirloom passed on to future generations.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Shout out to Annie. So we're going to get back into the great conversation that we're having. Thank you for joining us, Bill. This is a great conversation. I'm really glad to have you. I think that this is something that I really wanted to do when Teddy and I decided to have a show. I was like, ooh, I want to get, people like you on the show. So I really appreciate you. Shout out to Spartan Defense in Colorado, our other sponsor. They're the reason that we have this amazing studio. They are definitely Colorado's premier high-end gun store. Gear up, train up, come out and support, because these gun shops are truly out here fighting for your freedoms. They are putting their money where their mouth is. They are doing everything that we can. So thank you, and shout out to Spartan Defense. And be sure to go like and subscribe to all of our platforms. We are on Rumble. We are on YouTube at the Second Syndicate. Follow us on X, and follow all these amazing people here too, because this is exactly how we break the narrative. As we have more people involved and we start bringing in everybody under the protection and umbrella of the Second Amendment, because the second is for everyone, and that is absolutely true. Shout out to Tony Simon. So legal warfare tactics, let's jump right into that, and let's talk about what role the public pressure plays in winning Second Amendment lawsuits, and how can our audience out there help tip the scales and making sure that we are keeping the pressure on and helping build up our arsenal against these unconstitutional laws.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best thing that the public can do is, continue to keep awareness about these issues going, and, talk to their friends, talk to their neighbors, talk to their shooting buddies, and make sure that they're aware that these lawsuits are going, and encourage them to support groups like Second Amendment Foundation. Ultimately, public opinion is a distant second to the opinion of whatever judge we're in front of. We need them to agree. But the way that we're able to have the most lawsuits going in the most places with the best attorneys representing the people is to have the support of our members and our supporters in the constituency and the gun community more broadly. And so making sure that, the stories about the cases that we're filing and fighting on everybody's behalf out there, and that those are being shared amongst the community so people know that we're fighting the fight, and that we need their support. That's really critical to the ongoing success of all of our rights being protected.
Well, and I want to suggest one other thing that's highly effective. Well, things are still at the legislative level, is to call, even if your local politician is good, fine, give them a call, encourage them, but call anybody in your state, especially like the rabid, blue-haired moonbat gun grabbers. Call them, Again, the goal is to win the fight. So public pressure is good. Call them and tell them you donated to their campaign. They're not going to know you didn't previously, and that you're not going to in the future. No, I'm telling you, like this is effective, especially with people at the local level. If they think they're going to lose monetary support and they won't be able to win another election like that, and putting public postings like this on Facebook too. Anything to grab more people and apply as much pressure as humanly possible, because they will back off if they think that's going to cost them their seat and the gravy train's going to leave the station on them. That's how you influence politicians, to make them think that their funding is going to get cut off from a lot of small donors and small sources. Now, some of the loudest voices aren't going to care about stuff like that, that they've already made their bed. This is who they are. They're not going to change. But especially some of your squishy ones, or your ones that want to kind of pretend to be of the people, if you organize calls, get all your friends set something up like this, and all of a sudden their people are getting hundreds of calls a day saying that, hey, we donated to your campaign before, we're not going to do it again unless you change your position on this, and we want to hear you state that publicly. That is enough to get some people to shift, and especially if it's a close vote, then that can be all it takes to make a difference and prevent some of this legislation from ever being enacted.
So I get tagged a lot on X platform when people, these laws pass or something seems very egregious when it comes to Second Amendment. People are outraged. They'll at me at Boomstick Babe on X, and then they'll also tag, the Second Amendment Foundation and also other organizations that they feel should be aware of this and be on their radar. Does the Second Amendment Foundation have state chapters or groups that people can get involved with? Do they have volunteers who maybe represent the Second Amendment Foundation on a state level, or is more things that the Second Amendment Foundation deals with on the federal level?
So we do have local organizations that we work with all over the country. So some of them are directly affiliated with us, and other ones are just their own independent gun rights organizations with whom we have friendly relationships. We always endeavor to be a friendly neighbor with other people fighting in the same direction as we are. And we work with state groups on a lot of our cases because the state groups are the boots on the ground. They are the grassroots support. And frankly, they also have, the access to the plaintiffs that we need. And they have all of the legislative history and, the analysis of exactly what's going on in that state and how it works in that state. Because, as a national organization, we're trying to fend off 50 states worth of gun control, and we can't be an expert in all of them all at once. So it is super helpful to have state rights or state organizations that we can collaborate with for all of those reasons. But we as a national group, that doesn't mean that we only take on federal level cases. Like, we're not suing the federal government almost exclusively. We do have some cases against the feds, but overwhelmingly we're fighting in federal court challenging state laws or local laws, municipal laws.
Awesome. So obviously I want everybody here that is watching, you're always welcome here with the Second Syndicate. However we can be of service and however we can help, please consider us allies. This is something we're obviously very emotionally and economically attached to. Like, our whole identity is making sure that we bring more awareness and participation into the fight here in Colorado. So, welcome. You're always welcome here. And if there's anything we could do or anything that we can help with, you let us know and we'd be more than happy to. And, we do have a gun shop with Spartan Defense. So if there's a way that we can help share that information to our subscribers, to our customers as well, we would love to have more of a presence of the Second Amendment Foundation, however you guys see fit. So just
Absolutely.
putting it out there.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
We appreciate that. And we want people to donate. We want people to get involved because it is so expensive and it is so difficult. And hearing that people like you exist and you're doing this because this is something you believe in rather than something you're getting paid, all the big bucks to do, that really accounts for the dedication and the fact that at least our side has true patriots who are passionate about the cause. It's not always about who's the biggest donor or who has the most notoriety and fame. It's doing what's best for the people. So we definitely appreciate that and welcome that here on this platform. We wanted to break into a couple more topics that we had here, not only on the Colorado aspect, but on a national aspect. And if if I'm not mistaken, you manage attorney networks nationwide. And how can we grow that support in the state of Colorado for your organization?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is we have a attorney registration that's available through our website. That if you are an attorney in a state and you have some expertise in gun laws, whether it's rights restoration, working with ATF compliance for helping FFLs with other compliance issues, or ATF or other regulatory issues, or even if you're a criminal defense attorney and you work with people that are facing criminal charges relating to firearms possession or use, we encourage you to contact us. We maintain a consortium of attorneys, so then when our members and supporters contact us with an issue, we have someone for them to go talk to.
Wonderful.
As I mentioned, there are in-house attorneys here at Second Amendment Foundation, but I am an attorney in Pennsylvania. So as I tell people all the time, I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. And if you're not in Pennsylvania, I'm foreclosed from giving you legal advice anyway. But what we can do is, when we have attorneys that we have worked with and vetted and have spoken to, local to one of our members, we can always send them in the right direction so that they're getting the help that they need.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So how realistic is it to force, like, DOJ review of, or federal intervention when a state goes rogue in like gun rights? Like what is something that they can do?
Well, the Department of Justice is pretty limited when it comes to reviewing state laws. With going back to our high school level civics classes, in terms of separation of powers, it's the court system that determines what laws are constitutional and not. So the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch. So the executive branch is in charge of enforcing the laws. So what the Department of Justice can do, and what we're hoping that they do choose to do, and what President Trump signed an executive order indicating that they should do, is take a hard look at how the Department of Justice and other elements of the executive branch at the federal level are enforcing federal law and are enforcing federal rulemaking, like various rulemakings by the ATF. So in the last few years, think about like the pistol brace rule, or
Yeah.
the ghost gun rule, the frame and receiver rule, or the engaged in the business rulemaking that was part of the Safer Communities Act. Um, those things that are immediately under the control of the Department of Justice and the rest of the executive branch, they can make more immediate changes there. And so we would encourage the Department of Justice to do that. One of the other things that the Department of Justice can do is it can indicate support or opposition to state level gun control. And in fact, we just had an unprecedented incident in a case called Wolford, which is a case out of Hawaii, that our friend attorney Alan Beck has undertaken. That's a Hawaii sensitive places case uh, uh, lawsuit. And it was consolidated with our California sensitive places case lawsuit, which is called May v. Bonta, named for a YouTuber extraordinaire, influencer Reno May, who is our lead plaintiff. Um, but in Wolford, the United States, through the Department of Justice, just recently filed an amicus brief in opposition to the law. So for the first time in, I believe, recorded history, the United States Department of Justice filed an amicus brief arguing against a piece of gun control. So we
Wow.
we are certainly encouraged by that. So, the Department of Justice can't outright say that law is unconstitutional and take it off the books. But what it can do is say, like, hey, judge, who's about to hear the case, hey, judge, we think it's unconstitutional and we think you should strike it down.
Yeah.
So that's very encouraging.
That's nice to hear. That gives us hope. I think that's one of the things we need to really push in these communities now more than ever, is not to lose hope and not to feel defeated, because your focus really has a lot of power. And if you walk around and you're just starting to accept defeat, just like they want to discourage you from getting these permits, just they want to discourage you from not partaking in your Second Amendment right. It's so important now more than ever that you do not stop them or let them disarm you. I know it's disheartening to say that you have to continue to deal with these things for the time being, but disarmament is never the answer in order to do that. So just FYI, people, keep fighting and arm up. What's SAF's roadmap for the next 12 to 18 months, and how do grassroots activists plug into that fight?
Sure. So we've got a number of cases that we're currently in the planning process that hopefully we should start getting cases out the door and filed in the next month or two or three, probably multiple cases. We keep those plans a little bit close to the vest because we don't want to give a hint to the tyrants that we're going to be suing that there's a
Yes.
lawsuit coming so they can start planning ahead of time. But I think that, in terms of the long arc, the things that we're looking at is we're going to see additional lawsuits and hopefully expansion of the rights insofar as we're looking at the young adult issue. A lot of where we go over the next year is going to be dependent on what the Supreme Court does with the assault weapons case. If the Supreme Court takes the assault weapons case and we get the outcome that we're hoping for, and it's determined that assault weapons bans are unconstitutional, then we get to go out, and we already have these assault weapons ban cases filed all over the country, but then we get to go kind of on mop-up duty and go to California and New Jersey and New York and everywhere else where we have our assault weapons ban cases and go, here's the Supreme Court opinion. It says you lose, and we get to go collect our judgments. So that
Nice.
would be, and then the question would be, okay, now that we have assault weapons protected and assault weapon bans struck down, hypothetically, what's the next biggest problem that we would want to attack, and where do we go from there? And I think one of the things that we'd be looking at, of course, would be magazine capacity. That's definitely an important issue, and we're already involved in cases all over the country on that, but that would get a significant push because I think everyone's belief is that would kind of be the next organic thing that the Supreme Court would be interested in taking up.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that they have to say is everybody can have an AR-15. And then the question is, okay, well, how many bullets can you put in it? So, you kind of have to look at these things incrementally because typically the court takes single narrow issues at a time. So that's probably the next big Supreme Court issue that we would want to push. And there are also a lot of, well, not a lot of, but there are some particularly pernicious, there's two of them, handgun rosters that are really problematic for our poor folks in California or in Massachusetts that
Yeah.
ban 99% of the commercially available handguns because if they're not on the roster, you can't buy them in California or Massachusetts. Every gun in California is deemed an unsafe handgun until the state says otherwise. So we've got lawsuits again, on those cases already ongoing, but we would hope that that would also be another issue that the Supreme Court would be interested in taking up. Once it says, okay, this giant swath of modern sporting arms, semi-automatic centerfire rifles, you can't ban those. It's like, well, okay, what are the next big bans that the anti-gunners are going to go after? And it's going to be, oh, you can't have a handgun that has too many bullets in it, and you can't have a handgun that doesn't have micro stamping or a magazine disconnect or any other number of things that they choose to focus on seemingly at random because they identify it as a way that they can screw with us.
Well, yeah, and part of that is because a lot of these people that want gun control don't understand firearms, so they go after things that don't make any sense, like the magazine disconnect or things like that. If you were an actual gun owner, a shooter, or anything else, you'd understand. And that's part of what we're up against is ignorant retards.
Well, because their intent is not to
Yes.
It's not safe.
stop crime. Their intent is
Yeah.
to mess with us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah.
I think that there are some people that, that do have the best intent, but the people that are really pushing this sort of legislation, they know better. They know exactly what this is about. This is just about chilling the right by making it aggravating to exercise it, and that's all it's about.
Well, yeah,
So-
exactly. They're
No, go ahead.
communists. They want power. They want to disarm the American people because they're going to do things to us that we would shoot them for.
Oh yeah. And that's the whole thing is
Well
they're
put.
plotting to make sure that they can do those things and execute them with the minimal resistance.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, what makes a good lawsuit in the court of law and also the court of public opinion?
So in the court of law, I think, what we're looking for is big burdens that affect a lot of people, and burdens that are kind of easily identifiable, or easily understandable. As much as legislatures are very frequently ignorant to guns and they're passing laws that don't make any sense because they're completely ignorant to what it is that they're trying to regulate or ban. The judges are just as bad in many cases. Um, they don't know anything about guns. They know sometimes less about gun laws. So, what makes a good lawsuit for us is, when we identify a particularly egregious problem that we know that we can articulate in like an elevator pitch. If we can say like to a layperson, like, here's why this is a problem. Here's why the government can't justify its burden. And here's how it affects everyday people. And then, when we can find plaintiffs that tell that story. And frequently, the kind of the narrative story of the plaintiffs from a legal perspective shouldn't matter and doesn't matter. But in terms of getting the courts to actually take a minute and breathe and think and assign a little critical thinking skills and understand why it is we say that we have this problem, the narrative helps. So, if it's an 18 and 20 carry issue and we can frame it as like, this is a single mother who lives in a bad neighborhood. She's 20 years old. She cannot defend herself from her abusive ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
You can get that. That is a different narrative than the gun control people want to play. And
Yes.
that is the narrative that you can at least get a court that might otherwise be interested in just saying guns are bad, you lose, going like, wait a minute. Crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These lunatic gun people might have a point. So those are all the things, obviously, the legal analysis comes first and foremost. But when we can take a case that has that common sense appeal also, we do everything we can to maximize that.
Awesome. So, what advice do you have for Second Amendment activists and business owners, especially in states like Colorado that are blue states? And how do we organize smarter? What would you hope, in a perfect world like us, like to see on a state level in order for us to be more unified and more effective?
Well, get active, join as many groups as you can, join groups like you guys. Get the word out, make sure that you are organizing, make sure that you're voting, make sure that you're talking to your legislators and talking to your friends and family. And again, when you are talking to friends and family, it's important that you do everything you can to make gun ownership and Second Amendment rights approachable. Again, I'm pretty sure I'm stealing this line from David Yamane, who's a college professor who has written extensively about gun rights, and he has got a great book about gun culture 2.0. But the way that the gun community wins long term is proving that guns are normal and normal people own guns.
Mm-hmm.
If the gun community is portrayed as, like bald, bearded, tattooed white guys in, like 9-line apparel t-shirts, and that's all that we are, there's only so many of those folks, right? Like it needs to be shown. And what the other side has done a really good job of is portraying us as crazy people.
Yeah.
So as much as we are pissed off and frustrated and aggravated, when we present as pissed off and frustrated and aggravated publicly, it does the movement a disservice.
Yep.
So there's a time and a place for that. Of course, I'm not saying swallow that anger. But it is really important that we let people know who, are interested in guns, but maybe they didn't grow up around guns and they just don't quite get it, that like this is a thing that is incredibly important to the safety of everyone from unjust force, however it might come to you, whether it's a home invader, a burglar in the middle of the city, a robber on the subway, or the government coming at you. That, this is important to the ongoing liberty and protection of the republic and your family. And that our interest is not in being violent people. Our interest is in being free people. Those
Agreed.
messages, I think, need to spread because they're the messages that people who just candidly are not going to join you at the range every Friday when you go to burn $100 worth of ammo like I do. Like, they might not do that. That may not be for them, but that doesn't mean that we don't also want them and need them.
Agreed. And I think it's important. Like one of the things I started doing is hosting concealed carry classes for the Pink Pistols because,
Love
and
the Pink
that's,
Pistols.
yeah, because it took me a really long time. And out of respect for them, they really made sure that I was going to be a safe instructor for their community. And I appreciate that. And I've been hosting classes for them because I think a lot of organizations are very quick to deter people that are not like them. And it's like, wait a minute, they deserve the right to self defense too, and they deserve the right to education and access to that education. And there's a lot of people right now, and somebody I was working with last night said this, that especially with all these laws and all these things going on in that community with like, medical castration and changing their gender, there's going to be an entire community that is going to reject and change their mind about the decisions they've made. It's just human nature. And rather than reject them and shun them, we need to be here to welcome those people and let them know that we want to help them and we want to give them a resource, right? Not to be the exiles of society, especially when people realize that they may made a decision or did something different that they shouldn't have. People feel shame. And I feel the same way with gun ownership. There's a lot of people that I've met that used to be very, very negative about gun ownership until they either unfortunately were touched by violence or someone they loved was, and it changes their perspective on the importance. And rather than being like, you're an idiot, you should have listened to me, it's like, welcome. Let's help you and let's give you that education and let's make this a part of your life and the decisions that you're making, and not only gun ownership but situational awareness and de-escalation, because we don't want, like you said, we don't really want to be violent. We want to be able to be sure that if we're going to have to be violent, we're going to be effective, but we're not the people that are the first to reach for the gun. We're treating the gun as plan Z, and we're going to exhaust everything else that we need to do, because the goal is to what? To get home, to stay alive, and to get home to our families and live a peaceful life. So I appreciate your perspective on that. Mike, did you have any things that you want to bring up or touch upon?
I mean, nothing else that hasn't really already been said. Other than, I do think again, taking friends, neighbors, other people we meet to the range, introducing them to firearms, especially at this day and age, where they're programming a lot of younger people right out of schools to hate guns, to get them back into that culture and make them a part of it. Whether it's introducing them from hey, you want to go shoot the guns from Call of Duty, take them to the range, teach them the basics, and get them in our camp early on. Same with anybody that's older. Take them out there and help them to understand firearms better, especially if you're in a big city where, again, a lot of people are already programmed in that default mode to just do whatever the television says. It's our time right now to retake the culture. Things are changing; they're shifting back in our direction anyway. So we need
Agreed.
to take advantage of that and maximize it in every way we can.
Great
Wonderful.
point.
So when we're closing out the show, Bill, we like to ask everybody, some certain things about themselves. We definitely want to know from you, what is like your holy grail gun? Like if you could have whatever you want, no price, no law mattered, what would your holy grail gun be? And what is your preferred everyday carry?
Oh,
Oh,
holy
and Mike,
grail
you
gun?
too.
Oh, that's so hard. Probably a knight's rifle, probably like an SR-30. That'd be really cool, and I'm never gonna get one. Maybe if I rob a bank or something. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with an SR-30 for a grail gun. My everyday carry is right next to me. I'm gonna get flamed for being a FUD. It's a Smith& Wesson 66 Combat Magnum.
Nice. So, on YouTube, whenever somebody like reaches and grabs for a gun, and this is why it's so important, we're on X America News, is they usually will shut down the video because they think somebody, when they grab a gun, is going to do something violent with it, which is ridiculous. So shout out to X America News that we can have shows like this and do things like that and say free things, because if we were on YouTube, which we probably will air this on YouTube, and maybe we'll have to bleep that out or something, but I like the ability to talk about guns and have guns in the background and say these things, because you're right, we need to normalize gun culture and we need to normalize gun possession. And I always tell people they need to come out of the gun closet. Like, it's okay to be a gun owner, it's okay to own it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess my grill gun would probably be like, I don't know, a GE minigun, something like that. Something, if you're gonna go, you better go all the way.
All right.
And
Well, I
then,
mean, if like, are we taking A10 Warthogs? I mean, that's just a flying gun.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want the so you want the 30 millimeters. I'm willing to settle with the 7.62, and then I've got both my carry guns here. My smaller's the P365, and then the other my other's the typical Glock 19.
There you go. Oh, is that the little Q can?
That is the
That's JK Armament.
JK
Oh,
Armament.
okay.
The what is it? This
I can spot those
CCX.
baffles anywhere.
Exactly, yeah, the CCX, which works surprisingly well, by the way, better than I thought it would.
So
I'm going
since we're-
9mm can shopping this weekend.
We'll show what we're carrying today. I'm testing out this Vertex bag. So I have it with my little favorite gun of all time, my little Glock 42. I'm really
Nice,
great with
nice.
this gun. I know everybody's like, oh, what. I have all these really nice guns, but for some
They're the
reason,
standard for a reason.
there's that gun and I are just, we've been together a long time. And it's a special relationship. And I feel really good with that gun. I feel the most confident with that gun than I do with any other gun that I have. But a gun that I've always wanted and I don't own is a PS90. I've always wanted one. It's like one of those guns that everybody else has, but I don't. And I'm like, well, why
I've
is
got
that?
one right over here.
Yeah, I'm like, I need one of those. I want the one with the short barrel.
Yeah, you got to SBR it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and suppress it. I'm like, I don't like that whole long, funky look.
I haven't
to it.
SBR'd it yet, but yeah, I've got one of the first gen ones where it still has the holographic sight on it. But
Oh,
my
buildings.
tritium
Oh, that's cool.
capsules, yeah, but the tritium capsule's gone now. They only last about 10 years. So now you can't see the sight at night, but you can still see the hologram during the day. But I need to get it replaced or swapped out.
Come on, Form 1s are taking like 15 minutes. Go get it Form 1'd already.
It's $200. I just hate giving the government money.
I do too. It disgusts me. So I have 2 cans that I'm waiting on. One I've been waiting for about 10 months on. The other one I think I've only been waiting like a month and a half. And I'm so tired of this. It's
I'm
like
surprised.
suppressors are dangerous and they're harmful and they're a threat to society until you give us $200, and then they're okay.
I can't wait. I can't believe you're still waiting that long for them. Like, I mean, that's the one good thing with the kiosk thing at Silencer Shop now. Like, the longest I've had to wait is 3 days since that went in. Whereas I've had older cans that were 14 months or longer waiting for them.
I think that we have a better turnaround at Spartan without the Silencer Shop booth. I've done the Silencer Shop booth with my first can, and that's the one I've been waiting on the longest. I just did it in a different way over here at Spartan, and hopefully it won't take that long. But I actually reached out to the ATF, and I'm like, hey, I'm over here, and I don't know if it's because I'm in a gun case. I'm a plaintiff in Garcia versus Polis, and I'm suing the state against gun control. I'm like, is it because I'm now on a FBI watch list and I'm like a gun person that they're like, like, somebody help me out.
Yeah,
So
my understanding is like when they switched over to how they were processing, the Form 1s and Form 4s, the ones that were older and in the system and had been there for 10 months are kind of got pushed to the back of the pile, and all the new ones are getting instantly done. So, like the people that are getting their Form 4s back in like 48 hours, because like the ones that are coming in are going out right away. And so the ones that are waiting because they're in the old pile are just kind of stuck in the old pile, unfortunately. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but just from my friends that own gun shops and our FFL contacts, that's what I'm hearing.
because the turnaround on this was literally like not even a day and a half, and my other
Yeah.
one was 3 days. And these are both pretty recent purchases.
My dad died 10 years ago. You want to talk about that too? You guys all flashing your cans and, rubbing the salt in my wounds and
Well,
all this stuff.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm used to it from before. Like I had a full year and 14 months on a 5.56 and 30 cal can a couple years ago. Used to be terrible. My other 9 millimeter can, same thing. It was 8 or 9 months. I stopped buying suppressors for 3 or 4 years, and just recently started buying a couple again, just because of I talked to a number of people. Everybody said, hey, the turnaround time is now less than a week. So I bought one. It came back like 2 days later, and then I bought the other one, and it was 3 days. But that was a holiday, after a holiday weekend, so maybe they backed up a little.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for making me feel so
That's what we're
exceptional.
here
Any
for.
day now.
Mike.
Any day now.
Yeah.
So, in closing, is there a quote or anything, Bill, that you want to leave us with, and some words of wisdom for the folks like Bill and Ted? Be awesome to each other, something of that nature.
Sure. I mean, I think I'll just, remind everyone how important it is that we have everybody's support. The only way that we're able to keep the 60 pieces of litigation that we have challenging gun control all over the country afloat is with the support of people like you guys and, the good people of Colorado and, not just the people that are stuck behind enemy lines in California and Massachusetts and New Jersey, but people elsewhere in the country. Unfortunately, there's a lot of like, hey, that doesn't affect me, not my problem. But as we've seen, things that affect one state, uh, gun control and unconstitutional laws, once they take hold somewhere, they tend to percolate throughout the country. And ultimately we're all in the same boat. We're all Americans, and it's important that we take care of each other. And while it's a long battle, we're doing it for us, we're doing it for our kids and grandkids and great grandkids. So
Absolutely.
we appreciate everybody's support. We appreciate you guys having us on, and saf.org.
Awesome.
Thanks for
And
being here.
that's that's where people can go and actually donate and support the cause and the mission and keep the fight going. They can also donate to the Second Syndicate. We are a 501c4, so we are not just a show. We are not just entertainment. We are actually the tip of the spear here. We are fighting in Colorado. We decided that we wanted to make sure that we are reinvesting not only our time and our effort into the movement, but we want to actually put some money behind it and ballot initiatives and, getting more involved and getting the right people in office, because elections do have consequences, folks. So that's what we're doing here. Every dollar does count. You can go purchase merch from us. You can go donate to us on Give, Send, Go. You go to our website, The Second Syndicate. Follow us on all our platforms. Share our content. We are going to have some amazing guests and upcoming shows for you. So keep following us and keep up to date of the amazing people that we're going to have. We are going to be headed to DC and doing some amazing work with Ex America News. So be sure to like and subscribe and support everybody on there. And, be awesome to each other, guys. This is a fight. Welcome people. Be open-minded. Come out of the gun closet. And remember that there are no other rights if there is not the Second Amendment. So the second is first here at the Second Syndicate. And we will catch y'all on the flip. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And we will see you soon.